Jack Boland has literally changed the lives of thousands of people, and he can help you change yours. The following lessons are designed to give you the information and inspiration you need to make your life what it can be. This program is entitled The Superpowers of the Mind. And now, Jack Boland.
This series of lessons is based on the idea that each person has tucked away within themselves 12 mighty, irresistible, mystical mind powers. But these powers are so securely hidden that hardly anyone is aware of their existence, because these powers can only be used by mature people. By mature, I do not mean old, but I mean responsible. You would not turn the keys of your automobile over to a 12-year-old child, would you? There's too much power there. Too much damage can be done. And so it is with our inner powers. It is not until we begin to grow and assume the responsibilities that are ours, become conscious beings, that the truth about ourselves can be revealed to us. The idea is that each one of us must discover these powers for ourselves, and then, having discovered them, that we must call them forth into directed action. And I want you to know that I am so turned on about this class. This is my favorite subject. It's my favorite subject for me. Of course, if it's my favorite subject for me, it's the one that I like to talk to you about the most. And I ask you, if you can and if you will, to join me for this series of classes, all of them that you can make. I'm going to be here every Wednesday. But I'm going to be doing more than just talking about these ideas. I'm going to be practicing them. I'm really going to get with it. And if you will, the most amazing things will happen to you. I promise you that if you'll just try the first 4 classes, the first 30 days, that your life will change dramatically. And some specific miracles will occur in your life that you probably now would believe could not happen to you. But they can happen to you. Charles Fillmore was, in my opinion, a genius in the realm of spiritual thought and teaching. And he taught that man has 12 powers, or 12 faculties of mind, and that these 12 faculties are symbolized in the Old Testament, for example, by the 12 tribes of Israel and by Jacob's 12 sons, that these were symbolic stories that were teaching us that there was more to us than meets the eye. In the New Testament, the 12 powers are symbolized by the 12 disciples of Jesus, the master teacher of how to use your mind. That's what Jesus was. He was a teacher. They called him teacher. Rabbi, meaning teacher. And he understood our superconsciousness. He was functioning from that higher dimension of self. And he called forth these 12 disciples, and they were taught in a manner and disciplined and trained by him, that a manner that and a discipline that is indicative of something more than just working with people. And each of these disciples stands for a specific power of your mind. And Charles Fillmore said that each power had actually a center, a specific area of the physical body in which it was located, although that power worked throughout your whole mentality and spirituality. Now, the object of these lessons will be to prove that all of this is true, and to prove it to your satisfaction, because if it's not true, we don't need to work with these ideas. But if they are true, then they are ideas that can be demonstrated in your experience. Now, in order to prove them, we will need to familiarize ourselves with the function and with the character and the location of these 12 disciple faculties. And then, having discovered them and knowing something about them, we will seek to awaken them so that they may become active and begin to serve the spiritual self of you. Now, wouldn't it be a fantastic concept to begin to believe that you have 12 intelligent mind powers that can go to work for you and can accomplish for you in a fraction of a moment, instantaneously, things that you could not achieve yourself in days and weeks and months of taking thought and of outer activity. Wouldn't that be fantastic if it was true? Well, it just happens that it's true. If you don't believe it, stick around. Now let's examine and begin to work with the first of these mighty powers so that the force will always be with you. Oh, you saw Star Wars, didn't you? And the force is there. You know how real it was. But do you remember that in the movie, there were certain conditions that had to be met? The force wasn't just active in your behalf arbitrarily or simply because it decided to be. Something was required of the individual. There was a certain movement in consciousness, a certain understanding or commitment on the part of each person. And so it is with you and me. Now, the first of these faculties that we'll work with is called faith. And in many ways, the most important of our 12 powers is faith, because so many things depend upon our awareness of faith and how we exercise it. And even as I say the word faith, almost everyone here immediately says, oh gosh, faith. I've got so much of that. Well, maybe faith is not what we thought it was. Maybe it's something else again. In Bible symbolism, Peter is the disciple who represents faith. And you recall that Jesus spoke to Peter and spoke about Peter more often than any of the other disciples. And so it behooves us to become acquainted with faith as represented by Peter as quickly as possible so that we can master the use of it in our daily and normal lives. Now, faith I will define as our supreme affirmative faculty. Faith is not an idea. It is not a concept. It's not what you think about something. That is not what faith is at all. It is our mind capacity to say yes to our supreme good. However, faith is not the intellectual yes that approves of something visible. Faith is not the intellectual faculty that selects one automobile off the showroom floor because it has more confidence or faith that it's the one that you need. Faith is not that intellectual faculty that works with visible things already seen. Faith is the spiritual faculty that appropriates the good and actually manifests or establishes the reality of the unseen world of spirit. You see, creation is already done. All that the Father has already exists, and all of it is already yours. But if it's already yours, where is it? Show it to me. Well, I can tell you how you can show it to me. By exercising correctly the spiritual power of faith. Because your power of faith will actually bring from the invisible world and make manifest in visible form the unseen good that already exists for you. And all of it is for you. Now bear in mind that I'm talking about the fourth dimensional possibilities of your mind. Faith, as I'm describing it, is not the normal activity of the normal person. So I want you to think above the word. Put the concept as you've understood it out of your mind. Because that's not what it is. I'm talking to you about the powers of the supermind and how to lead the life and have the experiences that are reserved for a super person. And the reason I'm doing this is because you really are a super person. Now, people don't know it yet. But you are. You really are. Faith deals with the invisible world of spirit, and it's the power or the capacity of the mind that is capable of beholding or discerning things that have not yet been seen and are not being seen by people standing on either side of you. Now, Peter, you will remember, was the first disciple to be called by Jesus. And the master teacher of spiritual law said, "Upon this rock I will build my church." Now, can you begin to see that he did not mean upon this man, Simon Peter, I will build my church? He wasn't talking about a person. He was saying, upon this power, this faculty, I will lay the foundation of something new. Something unexperienced yet. I'm going to call into activity the first stage of a new consciousness. And I will build the whole consciousness on this first one. It's the platform. It's the foundation. Incidentally, the word church in the passage that I quoted you originally was ecclesia, meaning the called out ones. You see, it didn't mean churches like buildings or synagogues or dogma or theology or any of that. Maybe ecclesia meant an invisible church or a state of spiritual consciousness composed of these mind powers that were being called out, the called out ones. These faculties of the mind that are being called forth into directed and conscious activity. That's the church. Your church is the sum total of your consciousness, and if you wish to build a church or a real consciousness, a fourth dimensional consciousness, Simon Peter, the faculty of faith, must be the first one called. And when Jesus first met Peter, Peter's name was Simon, remember? And Simon means, in the Hebrew, hearing. It means listening. It means understanding and obeying. And in the first movement of this faculty, we begin to hear some things inside ourselves. And you have done this, or you would not have found your way here this evening. And so I can call you Simon. You've been hearing and believing and understanding, and you've been obeying and what you've been hearing inside yourself. And Jesus changed Simon's name to Peter when Simon exclaimed, "Thou art the Christ." And each of us is Simon, whose name must be changed to Peter, who will look one day and say, "Thou art the Christ." This invisible, infinite presence within me, I see it. I did not see it before. And the faculty unfolds in a manner something like this in each of us. As you listen or hear that Simon in you and become receptive to the spiritual dimensions of life. You see, in the beginning, we're not very spiritual at all. Well, maybe you were, but I wasn't. We are mostly physical beings. That's our orientation. And then material. And we believe in that outer visible world of things that you can touch and taste and own and possess. But as you become receptive to the spiritual dimensions of life, you begin to behold and then to understand the reality of the spiritual dimension. You begin to know that there really is something there. You haven't really had a personal contact with it yet, but it's there. And so you begin to obey your inner thoughts instead of the opinions of others, especially religious opinions that you have accepted as yours when they never were really yours. Was there a time in your life when you, quote, accepted religion, unquote, and you didn't really accept it at all because you could not believe what you were trying to believe? Has anyone here had that experience? And then one day you stopped trying to accept that and you began to listen to what was happening inside yourself, and it became real. And it became yours. And in that moment, you were saying, "Thou art the Christ," this invisible. There's another dimension to my mind. And there comes a point when rock-ribbed faith supplants indecision and searching. And at that moment, Simon becomes Peter. And upon this rock, this crystallizing, hardening faculty of awareness, upon this rock, this new and exciting expectancy of something happening in spirit, I will proceed to build and to live my new life. That's how the faculty begins to unfold. And then it becomes the newly discovered Simon Peter. Now let's be realistic. So you have been Simon, and now you're Simon Peter, filled with faith, okay? There come moments when your faith wavers. It vacillates. You see, it's new to all of this. These are strange ideas, and it's hard to remember them. For example, some unexpected event occurs that overwhelms you and makes you feel totally helpless. It can happen at the breakfast table or on the way to work. That driver pulls in front of you. Or the traffic stops and you just have to sit there. Or some heavy responsibility is thrust upon you which seems impossible of handling successfully, as if it is as difficult for you as it would be to move a mountain. Or you need a job and it's not there, and you keep looking and it's still not there. And your faith is flattened like a punctured balloon. And what happens? Well, you know what happens. You immediately revert to your old ideas and reactions. That's what happens. And the Bible, in its inner teaching and wisdom, predicted it would be this way with each one of us. And you know the character that was used to tell us how we are and how we would be so that we would not get too dismayed or disturbed when it began to happen to us? Well, the character that was used was Peter, who represents the mind power of faith. And he vacillated and even denied knowing Jesus. And all the while, prior to this, he said, "Why, Jesus, I'm your best friend. These other 11 guys, they don't have it. You can trust me." And Jesus said, "Peter, 3 times before the cock crows, before the new day breaks, you are going to deny that you even knew me." Well, Spirit knows us pretty good. There was another time when Peter, with the faith power really flowing now, he was really moving with it, and he walked on water. And suddenly, he looked down. Did you ever look down? Were you ever really moving? Pow, you really had it. And you looked down. And the moment that he looked down, or doubted, or disbelieved, in the spiritual dimension, you see, looking down is believing in the earth. Looking up is believing in the invisible light. And the moment he looked down, he started to sink. And at that moment, the Christ, or the spiritual dimension, rescued. Let me ask you, Simon Peter, have you had any sinking spells lately? I know some of you have, because I've talked to you lately. Have you denied your own or someone else's spiritual nature? Did the roof fall in and suddenly your faith in God reversed itself and became faith in the outer appearance, and you just knew that even God himself couldn't fix it? Well, fear is faith placed in the wrong direction or the wrong thing. It's faith in an outer condition. And this is our natural human condition. And we're training ourselves. We're in school. We're in class. That's why we're here tonight. We are beginning to train ourselves to think in a new way and to recognize that we haven't had a nickel's worth of faith in our whole life, most of us. Now, Jesus, who represents the spiritual identity in each one of us, reached out his hand to Peter when he was sinking, and the wind ceased, and Peter's mind let go of the outer once again, and of the power that conditions had over him, and suddenly all was well. And if you've had a sinking spell lately, why don't you do that right now? Just let go of the outer. And that infinite presence with you will take you by the hand and lift you right back up where you belong. You're a water wall. Now, Jesus was very clear and definite in his teaching concerning faith. So much so that he used the Greek word pistis, which is described as faith in the English version of the New Testament. This word pistis had and has a very special meaning that goes back hundreds of years before it was introduced into the writing of the New Testament. Pistis means, and I want you to hear this, ever continuous, throbbing, rhythmic, moving power. You see, faith is not a concept or an idea that you have about something. The word pistis means ever continuous, throbbing, rhythmic, moving power. And it describes the constant movement, for example, that of workers when they were rhythmically swinging long flails to thresh grain. Remember the pictures that you've seen in olden days of people who were harvesting grain, and they used those flails, and there was that continuous, free, flowing movement. That was an action that man could take. Now, Jesus used the word pistis to mean the pulsating, throbbing, harmonious power that's in the soul of every person. The rhythmic power of the universe. The constant, continuing power of the supreme energy of God. Now, that's what faith is. Faith is a power. Can you hear that? It is not a concept. If you never ever conceived of it, it would still be the power, and it is still moving in that vibrating, continuous way. It's the supreme energy of God, and it is in you. Now, such power is the substance that which stands under of all that exists and all that can exist. Now listen to this from Hebrews. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is the actual spiritual vibration or substance from which all things are made. If anything becomes visible, it's going to be the vibration or this movement or this continuing activity of faith that makes it come forth. Faith is the forming power. And why do you think that the master teacher called it forth first? If we're going to form a new consciousness, we must begin it with the power that forms all things, including our own consciousness. Upon this one, this activity, this firmly entrenched new consciousness or new power, I will build my total consciousness. Even today, the word pistis is the root of our English word piston. Piston, as you know, is a device to convert the explosive power of energy. You know, power explodes and it's useless. But in the cylinder, the piston converts that explosion into thrust power to set in motion the crankshaft. And here you are again, back to that rhythmic, continuous, throbbing, moving power. It's fantastic. You see, it's always moving up and down constantly, rhythmically, harmoniously, and continuously. And if this motion is vital to the mechanics of our time, it is equally vital to the spirituality of our own nature. Faith is not just an idea in the mind, a mere belief about God. It is more than thought. Faith is a power of the soul. And if you wish to have your ideas manifested, you'll have to expose those ideas to faith or with faith, so that faith can take the idea and then give it form. It will bring to its substance, because faith is the power of substance. And without faith, your mind may vision what you want and guide you to it. But without faith, there will be lack of enough power to attain it. You can want a lot of things, but faith is the substance of those things. Evidence of things unseen. Let's try to illustrate this idea. Take, for example, healing. Now, primarily, healing is a principle, and healing is omnipresent. It always is. It exists everywhere throughout space at all times. But healing as a principle remains just that, a principle. There is a healing activity that is in your body. You know that if you should scratch yourself, in that moment, there's a healing activity that immediately begins to repair the damage. That's remarkable, isn't it? But the healing activity of the human body is frequently not enough to sustain the human body, and so a body will do what bodies sometimes do. Now, with enough faith, you can call forth at a super level the healing activity. And it is invisible, potential, formless, but on that ultra high level of spirit, you see, Healing does no good for a sick or ailing body. But faith changes this in a very special way. Faith says yes to that principle of spiritual healing. And faith personalizes healing into a specific area of activity called your body, or your life, or my world. Faith makes the healing process active in a certain arena or area. It comes alive. And it transforms the level of energy of that principle from what the Bible calls heaven to that of the earth. Or we might say faith brings the vibration, or that magnificent vibration that I described to you, of invisible principle of the heavens into the level of the physical body. And that becomes a healing of the body, of the mind, of your affairs. And Jesus said, your faith is healed. Your faith has made you whole. According to your faith, it was done to you. But faith was merely the power of the mind that activated the principle of healing. What I'm trying to say is this. Faith connects us to the fourth dimension, to the kingdom of God, and to its power, to all of its powers. Without faith, you may seek meaningful and fulfilling relationships, but you will lack the power to draw dynamic people into your life or to excite those whom you love and need to remain near you. You see, we're always drawing to ourselves the level of our own consciousness. And if you want real people in your life, it's necessary to become a real person. And if you wish to become a real person, it's necessary to turn yourself on at the higher levels. Faith is an absolute requirement. Not faith in ourselves, because that's not faith. But faith in the fourth dimension, or the spiritual dimension. Without faith, all efforts to obtain abundance and prosperity and health are futile. But with faith, this continuous harmonious activity, your desires must be fulfilled. They will be fulfilled. Faith is the urgent desire in your soul to experience that which is unknown to you at this moment, but is really yours in spirit. Now, when a person says yes to what he already sees with his own eyes, that's not faith. That's simply agreeing or accepting evidence or proof that is there. That's not faith. It requires no faith at all. That's an intellectual process, and faith is not an intellectual process. As a matter of fact, you have to frequently trick your intellect so that you can trigger your faith. And we say that seeing is believing, but believing only what you see, or believing only what you believe, is not faith. It's only when we go beyond this three-dimensional level of our own human concepts and can begin to touch a vitality, energy of the fourth dimension. That's when we touch faith, because faith is a spiritual power resident within each one. And not only is it necessary to begin to conceive of faith, but in order to really understand it, we must learn to exercise this fourth dimensional power of faith by practicing faith. And you do that by believing in faith and experiencing faith for this invisible good which is God in your own life. You and I never really accept anything or understand anything except in terms of our own experience. That's all that's important to us all. What will it do for me? Then I can understand it. Then I know it's real. So would you like some reality? And the first thing that you do is believe. Now, believing is not faith, but you believe and you believe and you believe and you believe in God, you believe in love and you believe in healing and you believe in supply, especially when you're broke. You believe that there's an activity called supply that's happening to you, and belief is the key that unlocks the door to faith. Faith is quickened because of the human activity of belief, but faith is the spiritual power which actually does the thing which is to be accomplished. Your belief does not do it, but faith does. It's kind of a tricky thing, but I know that you're hearing it, aren't you? Faith is a power. Do what the father of the young boy did when Jesus asked for the father's belief to help heal his sick son. And the father said, Lord, I believe, but help now my unbelief. And what happened? The boy was. If you have an area in your life that needs fixing, and I'm sure you do. Believe that it's being fixed right now by an activity of spirit. Believe that divine intelligence, have faith in God. Really believe that the power of God, the love of God, the intelligence of God is working in that area of your life. And believe it until you almost believe it. And then say, help my unbelief. And keep on believing, and suddenly something will happen. You will see that you have triggered faith, and it will be your faith that makes you whole and gives you a whole experience. Another definition of faith is expectancy. It's not just that we believe that God exists. That's not faith. A lot of people believe that God exists, but expect nothing until some future time, in some future or distant part of the universe. Faith is the expectancy of the experience of God's power in my life right now. Faith is that I believe that something's going to happen to me. As a matter of fact, it already is. And no human power, no condition on this earth can stop it. Faith is an absolute expectancy that does not permit of any other possibility. Now, when you're vibrating at that level, you're in business. Because the universe must respond to that kind of thinking. And most of us feel almost guilty about that. The intellect says, that's presumptuous. I don't have the right to do that. Not only do you have the right, you have the responsibility to think that way. You will never be a whole, mature person until you have convinced yourself that this is mind possibility for you. There are two main ways that you awaken and develop and spiritualize your disciple powers or mind powers. And the first one is by consciously practicing meeting your own life's experiences with faith. You develop a maximum dependency upon God in all that you do. And this is our assignment this week, to go out into your life and not do it. Go and do it. But admit that of yourself you can do nothing. But there is a power within you that can do all things and is doing, achieving the most remarkable results. And if you have a problem, or if there's a part of your life, some aspect of your life that you haven't really liked, be especially aware. Believe it until you believe it. And then keep believing it until you see it happen. Expectancy means to anticipate the occurrence or the coming of something. The second way to develop faith, and these two ways must work together. You can't have one without the other. Is through prayer and meditation, to improve your conscious contact with God through prayer and meditation. And an especially good way to do this, work with your own mastermind group or to develop your mastermind group. Those of you who are members of mastermind groups know the increased faculty of faith. It's a dramatic thing how that suddenly, in the midst of a mastermind group experience, the faculty of faith will be enhanced to the point in your consciousness that all things are possible. Let you and I practice a meditation technique that will quicken your faith faculty and will awaken this power to its awareness of God's within you. We're not just going to be talking about these powers. We're going to demonstrate in your mind. So become relaxed now. And you remember that Charles Fillmore in his book, The 12 Powers of Man, located the physical center of the faith faculty in the pineal gland, which is located approximately in the center of the head. Let's begin our 12-hour meditation by sitting quietly for a moment until you're relaxed. Now place your attention at the very crown or the top of the head. And at that place I behold the Christ of you, higher energy. The perfect self of you is there. The Christ of God is quickened in me. The mind of God is quickened in me. Now at this point, let your understanding clearly know You are not the faith. Faith is one of your factors. You are not it. You are the consciousness. Peter is one of your 12 powers. And before this truth dawned on you, you were a carpenter, a builder in the realm of matter. As a carpenter, you can only work with material things, visible things. And Peter was a fisherman who drew his thoughts from the changeable, unstable sea of the sense world. But now you know that you're a spiritual being, and that you are actually mind, the mind of Christ, that in reality you are the whole person. And so you leave your carpenter's bench and put aside the carpenter's tools, begin to use the tools of feeling. And you are aware that the tools of this new field of labor are your untrained mind. And the first of these faculties to be brought under your dominion is Peter, the thinking power that says yes to the kingdom of God and good. Now move your center of attention to the solar plexus region. It represents your feeling, the subjective level. In this deepest level of being, acknowledge that the mind of God is being quickened. I feel an expectancy, a peace. Something is happening that is from the invisible world of spirit. The mind of God is in me. The activity of God is taking place all around me, working in all things to perfect me. And upon this expectancy, I build my new life. Now let your center of attention travel to the middle of the head. And the faith center is there, and let the Christ softly. I call Simon Peter, disciple faculty of faith. Before Peter walked on water, he said to Jesus, if you call me, I will come. If you call me, I can do it. And Jesus said, come. And I can feel the quickening of my faith. The movement of this dynamic energy or power that is. And upon this awakened faculty, I begin to build my new life. My new expectancy. My new world. And I am grateful that my faith is now united with the spiritual world, and I believe it. This is my prayer of faith. God is my help in every need. God does my every hunger feel. God walks beside me, guides my way through every moment of this day. I now am wise. I now am true, patient, kind, loving too. All things I am can do, be through Christ, the truth that is God is my help. I can't be. God is my strength, unfailing, quick. God is my all. I know no fear, since God in love and truth are here. Give thanks. The faculty of faith is calling forth the activity of God in every area of my life. And so, now, the color key for faith is dark. Today and this week, and every time you see the color blue in the sky, or the dark blue of someone's jacket or on a signboard, I want you to be reminded of your newly awakened spiritual power. Every time you see dark blue, that's reminding you that you are a spiritual being filled with faith, with an activity, with an energy, not just an idea, but with an active energy that is working in your behalf to literally perform miracles for you. You have the power to say yes to your good, the power that believes that this activity in you is greater than any condition in your world. Will you make a commitment to believe that this week? If you do, there's something else that I'm asking you to be aware of. Observe yourself for the rest of this evening, this week, and begin to notice where your faith really is. And you'll be amazed at how much power you give to persons, to places, to conditions, to things that control your mind. You'll discover that your thoughts and feelings and your life is controlled by outer things. Listen to the music on the radio, and one song will lift your spirit, and you will soar like Jonathan Livingston's. And in just a moment, here will come another one from years back to remind you of, well, you know what it reminds you, huh? And down go your spirits. Now, where's your faith? Faith says that nothing on this earth has power over me. There is only one power in my life, and it's the activity of spirit taking place in me, and no one else can see it, but I know it. And it's now performing the most remarkable thing. And if you catch yourself giving other things, that's all right. It just means that for a moment you look down and you begin to sink in the waters of negativity. And each time you do, ask the infinite presence of God within you, Christ of you, your hope of a glorious day, or a week, or month, or year, to hold out its steadying hand in the lifting of the game. When you ask, have faith. By that I mean really expect something to happen. Really expect something to happen. Nothing can happen unless you expect it, unless you anticipate it. You expect nothing to happen. Nothing does. And faith guarantees it. If you expect something to happen, something will. And that's the law. With this new faith that has been formed and has already been there, but the activity of it has been forming in you tonight, you are expecting God to happen to you. And the master teacher said, by your faith will be done. God is experienceable by you in the natural and normal events of your life in a way that will amaze and delight you. Remember that Peter, the awakened faculty of spiritual perception, makes possible this magnificent experience. When Peter says, thou art the Christ, and my friend, I behold the Christ in you. And so it is.
Concludes the lesson on side A. Now, please fast forward to the end and turn the cassette over for the continuation of The Superpowers of the Mind.